So, Anna, is
down.
6 shots of espresso in a latte an excessive number of espresso shots?
Is that a 6-shot latte?
It is. I'm trying to figure out, like,
Aiden!
what the...
Go to the hospital!
No.
Welcome
To the Movie Overload podcast.
the podcast thing that we do this time when we do it. My name is
Where we do it...
Chicken
Oh,
Brent.
What?
Because I can't stop thinking about Claudia with a chance of meatballs lately. So that's... Uh-oh.
we're traveling through the history of cinema, from the trip to the moon to Parasite, on a weekly movie club thing.
And my name is Chicken Brent.
Chicken Brent. Okay,
And
Chicken Brent.
And your names.
I'm Anna.
Okay, that's good. That's one.
Cool.
Thank you.
I'm Hunter.
Okay, that's 2.
I'm mildly annoyed already.
Oh, that's a good one.
Savage!
But my name's Aiden.
Oh, I thought
Yeah.
that was your name. Dang it.
You can call me mildly annoyed already. You can also, as always, just sigh into the microphone, and I will get the hint.
Okay, interesting. So, another in our new line of mouth noise names. We've got and we've got.
I can't
Cool.
sign to
You know-
my
Very
mic.
good.
You
well.
can't? Try.
You can sigh. Yeah.
Yes. That's
Yeah,
pretty
you
That
can
was
sort of
just breathing aggressively into my mic.
That works.
Yeah.
So today we are talking about
Stop, you're gonna make me yawn.
Rublev.
Andrei. I'm pretty sure they say like.
I don't know how to pronounce
Andrei.
it.
I'm going to do a
Rublev.
French accent and see if that fixes it.
Oh,
Yeah.
the French.
Rublev.
Preach to us.
Mwah.
An American doing an Italian accent to pronounce a Russian name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
I'm sorry. I don't
Should I do
know.
it in a different accent? Should I do it in a Greek accent? Like I assume
Like Theophiles the Greek?
Theophiles
Yeah.
would have if I was okay. Did anybody else
Theo.
just totally miss all of his dialogue because the entire time they were trying to figure out if he had a discernible Greek accent in Russian?
No.
Because
No.
No, is that just me?
I
Yeah.
don't know what that would
Okay.
sound like.
That's why I was stuck on it because I was desperately trying to figure out if when he said things that sounded weird, if that was because he had a Greek
I
accent.
think
or
I
not.
don't know what Greek people sound like.
You need to watch more Yorgos, I guess.
I'm not
Yeah.
entirely sure if he was meant to be like a Greek like immigrant or just someone of Greek descent,
said he's
or
the opposite of
possibly
Greek.
just like
But he's Greek.
Is it like-
it's a
is it-
nickname
is it like
because
being a Jew?
symbolism, possibly.
No.
But,
I'm
like,
converting to Greekism.
don't know.
I just
Yeah.
want euros all the time.
Just in terms
Oh,
of like.
dang it,
being
maybe I'm
that
Greek.
way
I mean,
by,
if I learned
like,
anything from being really into
ethnicity,
Percy
right?
Jackson
That's a thing.
in middle school, like the Greeks did have a religion, I guess you could convert to. Ancient Greeks.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called other than just
Pantheonism?
sure,
Some
let's
kind
go
of
with
a-
that.
Kind of, yeah,
pig.
it's like a specific brand of like pantheism. Yeah.
My parents wouldn't let
But
me
that's
read
just
those
like-
books for a couple of years because they were afraid that I would get confused by
Yeah.
the fact that more than one god exists in those books. Again, why I wasn't allowed to watch Yu-Gi-Oh!
What? Okay.
Wait.
And at this point, my parents have completely repressed that memory. And like, why would we ever do that? That's fucking stupid. And I'm like,
Weird.
yeah,
Nice.
it is,
Weird.
isn't it?
Okay, but that's bonkers because I had sort of the opposite experience where the Christian school that I went to, my professor insisted upon the fact that the Greek gods are real.
What?
Oh, but they're demons.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was kind of but he did.
Mhm.
Right.
That's kind of what we took from it. I don't think he
Yeah.
fully wanted to say that that's what they're just other celestial
Yeah.
beings, but they're of a lower tier.
Right. I
Interesting.
remember hearing
I
that
actually
theory.
could see where he got there theologically, and I wouldn't, like,
His dad wrote a book on it.
Whoa.
oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't care that much about the Greek gods. I just definitely believe in, like, celestial beings that aren't God.
It's kind of interesting. I just I found it really weird that was the thing that he wanted to spend all of our time on in that class, because we had such a long like list of things that we could have gone through, like the Republic or something, and he just did not care because he wanted to just completely detour talking about basically how women are less intelligent and the Greek gods are real, and if you buy Kindle books, then it means that you don't like reading.
Oh my gosh.
All of those things are true.
I guess it's,
All of them.
He was
I guess like he's not
a
wrong.
massive prick who somehow
He had a
got
man
paid
bun
to yell at children
and a red
his
beard.
weird beliefs, as most teachers do.
Mm.
Yeah, it's because he was the nephew of the head of the school.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ooh, can someone
Cool.
spell nepotism?
NEP.
So Andrei Rublev is a film.
Oh wait. I just
Yeah.
I feel bad now.
No, say it.
Because we're like 2 conversations removed. I just remembered that I was hearing someone talk about like the Percy Jackson series and like all the other series that guy has written, and how like they're kind of like, even though they're all like the different mythologies, they like kind of take place all in like a shared world, and they kind of all coexist.
No,
And
they
then
definitely do.
he was like, it's implied that Jesus exists among all these, and I'm like, oh,
Nice.
that would be awesome. That'd be hilarious.
The next book series is just like
The disciples.
just
There's
Jesus
only
is
one.
yeah.
What the heck? That would be.
But
a
then would
weird
they go
thing to
into the whole
tackle.
preacher storyline where like, or like the Last Temptation of Christ, where like, oh, this is the demigods who are the sons of the Christian Christ,
Yeah.
and
Doesn't
the
really make sense
monastic
to
order
tackle.
like insisted on
The
keeping a
only
pure
power that they
bloodline.
have is just making more food. Like that's
Nice.
the bit, is that's how they figure out, the kid figures out he's a demigod, because he's like, there's always so much food at my house. It's the place that all my friends come over, because they open the fridge and they're like, oh, do you want the last piece of cheese? And then they're like, oh, don't worry about it, and you just keep peeling and
And he's
peeling.
at Camp
And there's just
Half-Blood,
infinite
and he gets
slices
put
of American
in
cheese.
the Dionysus cabin because he can turn the water into wine, and so everyone thinks he's like
Oh man.
on with Dionysus,
Like,
even though Dionysus like hasn't gotten it on in like millennia, and they're like,
true.
how old are you?
Wow.
It's like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here.
When Jesus is just going all around getting some like Mary's swole up.
I didn't think about the like.
I guess.
Martin Scorsese would executive produce this film.
I didn't think
believe.
about it that far. I just was like,
Uh-huh.
it's funny to put Christianity alongside these other things that he wrote funny books about. Now
And then when you
now
put
I
it all
don't know.
together, it's a
I
wild
don't know.
time.
Anyway, I'm sorry. That's it.
So
What
knew about the
monasteries are
movie?
cool.
We're talking about this
Yeah.
because monks and icon painters.
You big monk.
Some background. Andrei Rublev was a historical figure,
Yes.
and also I don't think there was any real like desire to make an Andrei Rublev biopic on the part of the filmmakers here. To the best of my knowledge, from what I've seen, they wanted Andrei Tarkovsky wanted to do a movie about. I mostly what this movie is about is being in Russia during the Middle Ages, and it's sucking.
It was
real
so
bad.
muddy the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't think Russia was that gross, but at least that portion of
yeah.
Russia.
That bit with the guy who has the giant like stick and he keeps trying to hit guys
Yeah.
is the most Russian thing I've
That's
ever
so
seen in my
funny.
life. That's like stereotypically
It was
Russian.
great. I like
It was good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this movie is dense. It is a pound cake that you forgot to put the yeast in, and it turned into a brick.
And you just stand over your sink at 2 a.m. eating this pancake
Just
by the
trying.
fistful because you're just like,
I just need it. I'm not gonna finish my sentence.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
good.
We're gonna.
Thank you for your contribution.
Cool. I like that we can't see you on your camera anymore.
So yeah.
It totally, it's
Well,
not
chicken
intentional.
breast curls up into a little ball and
Like, you always
withers
make
away.
Why do I even bother naming myself?
Wait. I didn't hear your name.
Chicken nugget.
I'm Chicken Brent. I was just called Chicken Breast.
Can you blame me for making that mistake?
Nobody can see me on camera, so nobody can confirm or deny whether
No
or not.
visual gags in the podcast.
No visual gags in the podcast. No holding up cheese stuffed chicken breasts. That's like a dish, right? Chicken cordon bleu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So I can't just hold up chicken cordon bleu. Oh, I'm doing it right now. No one will know.
Oh, that looks yummy.
Wow, that can I have?
Anyway,
some later?
speaking of this movie, there was that famine about 2 hours in. That was
Whoa.
pretty sad.
Yep.
And the one girl was eating like sticks, and that was pretty sad. And they were
Yep.
eating like moldy apples.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that happened.
Honestly, I was really vibing with this movie at the beginning. I was like, wow, like 5 to 7 minute little vignettes that offer nuggets of wisdom about God and spirituality. Like, this is so cool. And then I started getting a little bit less into it. I think partly just as it like kept going, and I was like, oh, it's still going, and Russia is still muddy. And then especially when like the raid happened and things got really sad, I was just like, I'm just sad now.
Yep.
But I get it. Like, I get, like, it's important to your theology to be able to look at things like that raid and say, okay, where is God? Like, do I still want to be someone who paints Jesus like an iconographer?
That's like the most Russian theme ever, though. Like, it's literally all of Russian literature is like, everything sucks. How do I exist?
Yeah, we
Like
can
Dostoevsky.
go into the whole War and Peace, like stereotypical sort of thing. But that is one of the major themes of this entire movie: is how do human beings deal with suffering, and how, because there are a lot of different elements in here that break down really interestingly. And that's the thing with the density of this movie. This movie doesn't have a single theme that it follows through the whole thing. It's not that clear cut. It is,
And all of the characters that we meet at the beginning are dead by halfway through.
Well, most of
Except
them?
for Andre and Kirill.
And that other guy who
Yeah.
gets carried away, and they
a lot of
break
people
his
die.
fancy instrument.
During the Siege of
Oh, yeah.
Vladimir, I think it's implied that Andre and the mute girl are the only ones who survive.
I think they say that, but then there's also another guy who comes
Yeah.
back and he's like, some say people escaped and some say they died.
Well,
Yeah.
the guy that comes back is Kirill, but he was coming from a different town.
No, it was another guy talking to Kirill.
No,
Oh.
so he was
That was, like,
talking,
the bishop.
and he's said, I came from Vladimir. He's like, oh, there's someone else here. And he is doing a vow of silence for evil deeds that he has done in atonement.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, it's Andre. And so
Because he killed a guy who was trying to do some bad things that triggered me.
Carrying a woman over
that
his
was
shoulder.
pretty upsetting.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah, so
like-
this might be a good point to get into the fact that this movie has two cuts. It has a 205-minute cut that was first released, and then the director's cut, which is about 183 minutes. And
That's
the
the one I
odd.
watched.
yeah, I have seen both of them. I think I'm the only one here who has seen both. The main difference between the two cuts is the original cut was likely never intended to be the finished film. Essentially, the Russian state at that point had a film advisory board, and Tarkovsky explained that the original cut had a lot more graphic violence and nudity. The pagan scene is extended a bit and stuff like that. And fully expecting it to just get cut by the censors. He's basically just giving the censor something to censor so that they'd leave alone all the rest of the stuff he wanted in the movie. And the Russian government saw this movie and they stalled it out for a decade. Like
Dang.
this movie was in like distribution hell forever. there are a lot of reasons why people expect that the Russian government at the time didn't want this released, because it was under like the sort of communist Russian government that was trying to paint Russia as this strong worldly force that is upright and beautiful and a thing to be inspired to. And in this movie, Russia is a shit place to live where everyone is miserable. That doesn't really fit the vibe. It also is pretty critical and forthright with a period of Russian history that likely wanted to be forgotten. It's a time when the Tartars, or like the Genghis Khan and sort of like the Mongolian Empire, was spreading into Russia and just killing people randomly. And of course, the Russian leaders and government at the same time had no concern for the people. And there was a lot of just open suppression of joy. So like that scene, the second vignette of the movie, this movie is comprised of vignettes over the life of Andrei Rublev. You just pick up at different points in the life. Notably, though he is an icon painter, you never see him painting.
It's true.
You only see his paintings at the very end of the movie. Those like very slow like shots over the paintings. Those are the paintings of the real Andrei Rublev. And so it's just vignettes of like people trying to come to terms with the state of the world and their beliefs on theology and such. And in the very first scene, when Kirill goes out and sells out the jester, at that point in time, it was actually illegal. Jesters were like banned by the government. That's why he was taken away. They were seen as the servants of the devil, because as seen in the display, it had like this sort of body, more risque quality to it.
Right.
That whole sort of thing. But at the same time, the interesting correlation here, where I honestly don't know, like I find this film interesting because it doesn't have a philosophy you can really pin down. Because it seems to be on its face a fairly Christian, like Eastern Orthodox,
Eastern Orthodox
sort of film. But the only people who bring joy or experience joy in the film are non-believers, or people who are seen as sinners. The pagans in their like nights of like frolicking, who are persecuted by the church and like torn down and killed for being pagans, or the jester who is going around making these people laugh. And then the religious order comes in and everyone goes silent. It's a major theme in the movie, that sort of thing there, but on the other hand, it's not like unsympathetic to Christian views, and it isn't really advocating for any sort of abolition of like religious power entirety or religious belief, because Andrei's faith is a main focus of the film. And there is that aspect where he refuses to do paintings of people being tortured or put into hell, but he wants to do paintings that remind people of each other's humanity. He kind of wants people to get along, because you can kind of see it in the world of the film. Everything is shit. And so, like, you know, getting people into...
You're good.
You have it.
I feel bad because I've been talking for like 5 straight minutes.
You're on a roll.
I'm on a roll, but
I can say something if you want someone else to talk.
Well, I want to have a conversation with this.
Can I add something to your conversation? Because I think it will. Sorry, I was like ready to say something, and then my phone started ringing, and I couldn't get it to stop. So here we are. thinking about what you're saying about kind of unapologetic, like, here is the church, this is what they were doing. They were not experiencing joy or letting people really feel joy, but also, this is life. It kind of made me think of, and there was something at the beginning when Kirill is talking to Theophiles the Greek, and he said, your paintings have so much depth, they have so much faith, you're not...
Simplicity without gaudiness. Yeah.
Huh?
Simplicity with gaudiness.
Without gaudiness.
Without gaudiness?
Gaudiness, yeah.
Oh man, I just
Gaudiness
misread it
bad.
every single time he said that, and I was like, interesting that it's emphasizing the Anyway, I guess I'm wrong.
Yes,
Decadence.
that's what he said.
The decadence. Well, he was just saying that Andrei's paintings don't have the depth of faith as much. Like, you can kind of see... it's hard to explain...
They lacked humanity, is what he said.
It lacked humanity, but also you can look at something, and even if it looks identical, you can tell when something has depth and when something doesn't. So, thinking about that, and then I was also... It made me think of the conversation that I had with my friend... about the Seventh Seal and about Lutherans especially losing mysticism and losing the mystic side of Christianity and of religion, and how I kind of sense that Andrei is seeking that when he's walking around and he sees the pagans, and instead of leaving, at first he's like, we should leave, there's something wrong, and he sees them and he runs towards them and he stays the whole night in the forest. And just kind of seeking mysticism and seeking a reason for faith, and then he kind of just dies for a long time until he sees the bell. So thinking about what kind of religion is it that's just muddy snow, I guess, if that makes sense as a metaphor, and what kind of religion is full of joy and is that, I don't know, snow imagery, I just love snow a lot. So, like, the muddy snow on the road that you're just like, man, that's disgusting, versus, like, the first snow of the year, and it's just, like, so joyful and sparkly, and it's just, like, amazing. So it's kind of, like, the same faith, if that makes sense. Like, it's all snow, but Andrei is trying to find the joy in the faith that he's been plodding along in for so long.
Well, I find that an interesting point, because I see the salvation in this film not coming through religion, but through art, through the film itself is following artists, and there is a beginning section that is pretty much unrelated. It's seemingly that first section of the inventor with the air balloon that he builds that crashes and he dies.
He dies?
Yeah, so in the extended cut...
believe. Oh.
Yeah, so he falls to the
I
ground.
choose to believe that he survives.
In the extended cut, it has a shot of then a horse falls down on the ground and like rolls around trying to get up, and then it pans over to him lying there dead as the balloon deflates and causes bubbles in the water.
That's in the shot.
That's in there, but you don't see his body.
Yeah, I
Yes,
remember
body
the horse
was-
rolling around, and I remember the balloon kind of like deflating,
Bubbling.
but like
I
I didn't
took
notice
that
the body.
pretty
or
obviously
anything.
as him being dead. The
In the-
horse thing was like, okay.
He's just having fun. He's just rolling around.
I was like, the horse is just rolling over,
It's
and then
playing.
I started thinking about the time that I took riding lessons, and my horse kept rolling around.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the end scene in Kagemusha, spoilers, which is just, it's not, I guess, the very end, but a lot of the end of the movie is slow-mo shots of horses rolling around to signify just rampant destruction and death.
Well, and this movie symbolizes... This movie has horse symbolism, too.
I was about to say the horse, like, falling down the stairs. I was so concerned. I was like, please, is that horse okay?
Probably wasn't.
Whether or
very
not this
last,
makes you feel any better, that was real. It was done all in shot. They sourced the horse from a slaughterhouse that was going to kill it the next day.
Jeez.
I honestly don't know if that makes it better or worse.
So they were just like, let's push this horse off some stairs, and it'll break its leg, but that's fine, because they're going to kill it tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, and in the extended version, there's like a shot of a horse being like impaled with a spear.
Whoa.
Like that, the destruction of the city is what is.
It's horrifying.
I think it's
And,
time
like,
we cancel this
Yeah.
movie.
That was really
Dang.
difficult to watch. I don't know. The way that he used sounds and didn't show you anything, but he sure let you know what was going on, and
Well,
I just was really uncomfortable.
That is the turning point of the movie. That's the moment where Andrei loses, like,
Everything.
yeah, he loses that belief that he has that, like, he was arguing with the Greek, and he's like, this the Greek is like, everything is pointless and meaningless. Every baseness that humanity has been done again. If Christ came down, we would crucify him again. And
Honestly.
Andrei comes in.
Andrei!
Andrei, he
I
comes
believe it's
in,
pronounced Andrew.
and he gives. I had to look up things to figure out exactly what the controversy in what he was saying was, because it very much offends the theosophies, the Greek
Theophanies?
theophanies, the Greek. When he
boy.
goes through the Passion according to Andrei, where he basically says, if the Christ was crucified, it was by the will of God, not by the will of man. And so it's in some way either implicitly or explicitly tying this idea that suffering itself is, in a sense, ordained by God to some purpose.
Right.
Which
is so fast. Sorry, I'll get into
Yeah,
that.
no.
But, I think that's fascinating because it's not an idea that would have existed in the 1400s in Eastern Orthodox tradition. That's something that's much more
1960s.
recent. Yeah, well, it's also, I think, a little bit more even Reformation, post-Reformation era, restructuring everything to be centered around the will of God instead of around, like, the being of God, which involves also the restructuring of things like freedom to not mean freedom from something, but freedom to do whatever you want. And therefore, well, if God is sort of this ultimate being, are we limiting his power by saying that he can't do evil things or bad things or things that seem bad to us? Because, well, maybe the idea that God is good in the transcendental sense is less valuable than the idea that God wills things. And so then we spend all of this time trying to figure out, okay, what the heck does it, how can all of this suffering exist in the world? And we have this idea that God is willing it, instead of recognizing, as a lot of Russian literature like Dostoevsky specifically talks about, the idea that, like, actually, no, a lot of the suffering is not morally intelligible, and it would actually be worse if that were the case. So I think it's fascinating that Tarkovsky is doing this, because it's a very, like, modern thing to kind of project onto this older thing. And in the context of everything, it's very maybe backwards from what would have been going on.
Well, yeah, so that's part of the whole thing with this movie. This movie is a period piece out of period.
Right.
It is really a modern film exploring the ideas and concerns that were in the modern world through examining how the world used to be. And I find period pieces like this, these dirty period pieces that are just grimy, very interesting, coming at it from a 21st century perspective. Films like Terry Gilliam's Jabberwocky, which is like a medieval, like, fantasy epic, but set in settings that are intended to just feel the way that medieval settings would have, in that they are incredibly grimy, incredibly gross. There is, like, no light anywhere.
Which is also kind of what Kurosawa attempts to do with a lot of his Jidaigeki films, is to specifically bring that kind of realism and uncomfortableness to something that's normally painted in very, like, very, like, pretty looking lines. And he instead does the last scene in Seven Samurai, right, which is the last hour of just rain and mud everywhere, and everything sucks.
Well,
and they can't even afford rice, and they're eating millet.
A lot of the time nowadays we hear people talking about, I feel like I am, like, spiritually in this time in the past, because the aesthetics of that time period, the like, philosophical values of the upper class align with what I'm feeling now. But all of those sort of, like, desires seem to be drawn from this version of history this magic school bus version of history that a lot of us kind of live in accidentally, where we know.
Clarifying question. You said spiritually, like people feel spiritually connected to a specific time period and like the values of that period. Have you heard people use that specific language? Because I've never heard people feel spiritually connected to a certain time period more than they just like the vibe.
I was saying spiritually in the sense that in spirit, the way that would colloquially be phrased.
Like postmodern spiritualism, my spirit animal is like totally a fox.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
In that sense, where people are like, I feel like I would have been more at home in the Victorian era, living in the Sherlock Holmes, or in the 1960s.
Like I'm
just
the
want to
spirit
add.
of the
Can I add to
Victorian
that?
child.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you because there's like a lag.
Don't.
So I'm just like,
This is a podcast.
The whole point
Talk
is
over
for you to
me.
interrupt.
Everyone hates it, but we're fine. We don't have to listen to them. You're not our boss, Boyd. We will scream into you.
You got this. It's a good screen. Thanks.
Anyway, thank you. Thinking about wanting to live in a different time period. So I love the late 40s, early 50s. Mid 40s are great too. Just like the 40s, 50s, I love them very much. I love the music. I love the style. I think that I would enjoy living there, except that I might not. And I've had people ask me this a lot. They're like, if you could go back, would you? And I'm like, well, yeah. Like, part of me would just be like, fine being a housewife, and I would dress super cute, and I would have the best shoes, and my kids would run off to school wearing wool pants, and it would be amazing. But at the same time, I would not want to live in that era because there were a lot of things not okay about that era, like homosexuality being a mental illness. Yeah. So
or just like extreme lack of agency that most people would afford you. And
oh, for sure. Well, that too. But like, I feel like, you know, it's fine.
No, like I would totally like to be a 1950s housewife. It would be garbage, and you're like, oh yeah, women's liberation. I totally get why that happened, but there is like this sort of sense where you're like, but wouldn't it be easier if I could just like be at peace with my existence in that way, where I have a set function,
right,
and I can actually fulfill that function.
You just want to be Mary
and I
Tyler
marry
Moore in the
someone
Dick Van
really
Dyke
good.
Show so bad.
Yeah,
but
marry
then every
a
time I
rich,
think
handsome
about
doctor, or a not so handsome doctor, but he's rich, so you know. And
no, he'd be handsome.
Yeah, because people in the 1950s, they're all handsome. We're not into the 70s yet, where everyone looked like garbage. But
that's the best era.
No,
Everybody
it's not.
being themselves because they all look like garbage, and then you can watch 20th century women, and Billy Crudup is supposed to be hot, and he's not, and that makes him hot.
Yeah,
and it's so good.
No, well, the 70s are kind of great in that way, and kind of terrible in a lot of ways.
Also the fact that the government was like, "Here, have some LSD.
Yeah,
we want to test it to see
but I mean,
what
to
it
be
does."
fair, you're talking about some of the era where they're like, "Here, have cocaine." Because you're a housewife.
Oh yeah, 1950s. Take tranquilizers. You seem a bit
but
too.
Like the 20s and 30s, we had arsenic in our makeup, and it was so easy to just get rid of your abusive doctor husband and take his money. Just like some of my compact powder in the coffee cup.
Yep.
That's kind of incredible. I think. But anyway, what I'm saying is, I and maybe that's what you were saying. I don't know, but I think of that era and that kind of thing, and I think about Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and the very attractive aspects of that era, and you're like, oh, that sounds great. And then you watch something like Carol that's like more like what would maybe an experience of that era feel like.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Carol,
and it hurts.
It hurts. That is an apt description of Carol.
I love that movie.
If you want to hurt, it's good. It's a good movie to cry to on Christmas Eve with a small glass of eggnog, and
that's my favorite Christmas movie.
Your lesbian sibling, you know, like it's a good.
Oh,
good
I don't
time.
have a lesbian sibling. I have
Go get
Just
one.
adopt one. You know, they're everywhere nowadays.
Go get you a lesbian sibling.
I might. Well, we'll see. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah. It's a good movie. Anyway, I recommend it to people, and I just know, like, I feel bad every time I recommend it to somebody because I know they're going to be sad if they watch it, and like that's my fault. but at the same time, they need
Some movies hurt in a good way.
this movie is that
so much.
that sort of movie for the large swaths of the 15th century that we just don't talk about
Right.
or think about very
Can I
much.
add something really important to this conversation?
Yes.
This movie is like that one Monty Python bit about grime.
Yeah.
That's all. Continue.
You're
There's some
right.
good filth over here.
I'm not sure that I know this bit.
It's from the Holy Grail.
It's
That
from the
Seen
Holy
that
Grail.
king
and they're
comes
like,
up.
times,
who,
then I guess
who
I
made
just
you
forgot
king?
it.
Oh yeah.
It's where the peasants are asking
Just
who elected
any-
King Arthur to be king.
I
And they're
I
like
don't
remember that.
think having a sword lobbed at you by a watery tart is a good basis for a system of government.
Yeah,
That scene.
I do remember that.
Oh, there's a nice bit of filth over here.
I just haven't seen it in a while, I guess.
It's good. It's on a list. So
To
see you in
me,
a
it
couple
reminds me
months.
of actually, it's that scene, but it's also the bunny massacre scene.
Yeah.
It's just shockingly gory and upsetting, and yeah,
The
Yeah.
money massacre scene?
the bunny massacre.
Oh,
scene.
bunny massacre. Okay.
Yeah, when the
Yeah,
bunny
yeah.
massacres all the people.
Yeah, well, so that's comically bloody and horrific, and this is intended
Just sad.
to have you meditate on things being garbage.
Yeah, but I think somebody really pretentious would try to argue that that's what Monty Python does as well, and it would be very funny to read. and
That
I'm
would be
sure
really
that
funny,
exists.
actually.
Well, so reading some supplementary material about this film, I hear a lot of people bag on Tarkovsky fans, people who are just really into Tarkovsky movies because they're long and they're kind of artsy.
because they enjoy life.
I
the
think
fullest.
I do
Carpe
get.
diem.
I could see these films being, in a modern sense, slightly tainted by the presence of the people who talk about them and the way that Christopher Nolan films are, sort of. Because not as many people talk about Andrei Tarkovsky films, but reading people, especially younger film school people, trying to write about Andrei Tarkovsky films, a lot of them sound incredibly masturbatory. And I think...
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Well, like Woody Allen films.
Okay.
So
Gotcha. I'm tracking.
By the way, fuck that guy.
the way...
I've returned to the pod.
Welcome.
It's me, Hanana.
No. What did you think of the
Hi,
movie?
Oh, personally, I freaking loved it.
Wow.
What are we talking about?
Yep.
It's another 3-hour, very long movie.
I hated it. I couldn't sit through it.
You would not have enjoyed it.
And she runs
Very
away.
Russian.
Yeah, I think this is my first Russian movie.
really?
Oh.
Realized.
I'm the palindrome friend. There can be only one.
You can come back and fight Anna in the Lord of the Rings episode.
Yeah.
Because
Screw you.
that's the one you're coming back for.
Come on, please. It's like my lifelong goal to get Hannah to watch Lord of the Rings movies because she won't do it.
What?
They're long.
But they're
I get
so good.
They're not. They're
They're
not
fun.
even as. I mean, I guess they're as long as this movie, but they're way more interesting.
They're
and,
very
entertaining.
watchable. Yeah.
They're way more entertaining. I would suggest that I was not more captivated in the entire trilogy than I was during the bell making segment.
The bell was
The pen-
Honestly,
Ultimate
that was
segment.
really interesting.
The bell segment is the most strangely riveting thing I've ever seen put on film.
you get so intense
So
when they're
into
lifting
it.
the
And
bell,
that
or
poor
when they're
kid
trying
whose
to,
whole family died of the plague, and he's like,
Yeah.
I know how to make bells.
and he's so aggressive in getting it done, and I appreciate him.
Absolutely, a lot of people have compared the bell making segment to the filmmaking process and being like, no, so you bluff your way into it.
yeah.
You just be very, very certain about everything you're saying. Then when the movie is released, you break down in utter terror, then weep into the arms of a strange man, admitting all of your darkest secrets and the fact that you secretly had no idea what you were doing the entire
I was
time.
gonna say, I was seeing him crying, and I was like, "Oh yeah, when the imposter syndrome hits."
Oh, baby.
That is a fascinating bit. That's the weird thing about this movie, is that it begins with all these segments, and you're like, oh, this is really interesting. And then, like, at least for me, throughout the second half of the movie, I got so sucked in that at one point I was like, wait a minute. I'm not, like, waiting for it to be, like, waiting for the next segment, I guess.
It's
like
true.
I was with the first parts of the movie. It just, you get so caught in it. And with that context, I think, of having seen it before, this is one of those few movies that it's like, it's not an experience watch in the same way, because I actually think knowing what happens aids the, like, experience in a sense. Like, you have to have an idea about it.
Yeah, so Andrei Tarkovsky's movies generally have a very unique rewatch value, where a lot of films, you watch them once and then you go back and you pick up different things. But in a Tarkovsky film, it feels like you're going on and you're standing still. You're like on a treadmill, yet somehow just you're in the exact same place every time, but you're seeing completely different things. The first time I watched this movie, I was telling this
I
before
kind
we
of
started
hate that
recording.
emotion.
It's an emotion that isn't necessarily pleasant in a way that we all want to feel, but it is rewarding in some sense.
That's what I get, like, from, like, rereading poems that, like, I've already spent a lot of time in, or something that I've, like, written an essay on, going back to that sort of thing. And you're like, I understand this more or different now, but I'm so thoroughly in it. I don't think I could probably ever watch, like, Ikiru or Seven Samurai and it be like an experience again. It has to take on that kind of form that I feel like this movie has. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, no. So it's a quality that is very essential to poetry in that way, where it is drawing so much from the viewer of the art that art is a conversation. All art is a conversation in some way between the author and the audience, but some pieces rely far more on the audience and therefore can just change so much more over time as the audience member changes.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. The big thing with Tarkovsky is that his book that he wrote about filmmaking is called Sculpting in Time.
Well, like that title.
Yes, and that is a major principle. I haven't read it, much to my everlasting shame. I need to read it someday, but
think
as we all know,
Kogonada
I have
did
no
an essay
time to
on
read
it.
books. I can only consume media, nom nom nom,
In vast quantities.
in vast quantities.
Logged like 9 things yesterday or something.
I was watching
That's
a bunch
awesome.
of like experimental short films from the 1930s, and then movies about people being exploited by religion, and then I've been rewatching a bunch of Sondheim
Nice.
recordings from the productions in like the late 80s, early 90s.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
anyways.
like a whole vibe. Wow.
So, but Andrei Tarkovsky, in the sense of sculpting in time, you see it more and more as his filmography goes on. I've seen all of his movies. I would recommend watching all of them if you in any
Are
way.
they all 3 hours long?
I think this is the longest one.
This is his longest one. They are all long movies, except for Ivan's Childhood. Ivan's Childhood is like 90 minutes, but
I think Mirror is really short.
Mirror is shorter,
Mirror is
but
like
it
80
feels
minutes.
like the longest movie he's ever made.
107.
It's 107. Oh, okay.
Not bad.
I
It's
don't
under
know.
2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a thing in his movies. As they go on, they do linger longer in the moments that wind up happening. I love his late period films. That they're a bit more controversial, Nostalgia and The Sacrifice,
Oh.
because they don't have as many of the kind of, I guess, sticky qualities that these movies do. Andrei Rublev, it has a sort of like sticky moments to it, but especially in his like sci-fi movies like Solaris and Stalker, the science fiction elements are incorporated in a very unique way. Where
Those
like
are the ones I'm most curious to see for sure.
Yeah,
definitely
I guess it's
watch
most
them.
popular, I guess.
Solaris.
Stalker almost made this list.
Yeah.
I would recommend watching Solaris after we cover 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I was
because
really
that
hoping it would have the
it-
vibes of like the early bits of that movie.
It was actually Tarkovsky's reaction to 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Fascinating.
Because he thought that the space travel felt too mechanical, and he deliberately did not like want to watch ships taking off or landing.
Ooh.
Interesting.
He wanted the movie to feel more organic and human in certain ways.
So very like Hainish Cycle, like Le Guin and like Paralandra and Lewis and like those kinds of science fiction vibes.
Solaris definitely a lot of his works are drawn from like classic Russian sci-fi novels.
I have a
No
thought.
visual bits. Go.
I'm just raising my hand because I have a thought, and
for
I
us.
stuck it on my hand so I wouldn't forget it. I don't know if I do that. I like have a thought and I put it on my finger so I won't forget. I have a thought.
Yeah.
I think I've decided that I don't like long movies. I think that I don't respect them as much as I respect short movies. And I will add a caveat to that, in that I love movies with space, and movies with pause, and movies with room for silence, and the sound of shoes. I love that. But when it's a 3-hour movie and there's lots of space, I feel like it's lazy. That's just me.
Well, it
Reminds me about poems, okay? Because a poem is trying to express the strongest idea with the fewest of words. And I think that it is more honoring to your audience to try and convey the space with as little space as possible while still leaving room for the space, and that makes no sense, and I can't teach you how to do it. But
I know
the
what
short movies that I've seen that have space stick with me more than the long movies I've seen that have space, because it feels much more intentional and more deliberate, and like I must pay attention to it because the director of a 2-hour film thought that it was that important to put in. But after too long in this 3-hour movie and there was space, I was like, man, you only are allotted this much space that I'm allowed to pay attention to, so make my time worth it.
I have one question for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Is the Four Quartets less of a poem? Is the Iliad less of a poem, or Beowulf less of a poem, because they are long and take sometimes multiple sittings to get through, or because
I've
they
never
take
read the Iliad or Beowulf.
really?
But I've read
Oh.
Four Quartets twice.
That's kind of, I think, more what I think this is doing, right? Like you can, it's pretty obvious that those are different kinds of poems, right? Like
It's true.
There's the kind of poem that you carefully craft and you write, and it's this like somewhat small, concise, beautiful thing, and then there's some things that you kind of need to express in a different way, and you express them like I kind of felt like the Four Quartets did, where it's like maybe he could try to say the sorts of things he's trying to say and make it in a page, but there's so much more value to the fact that that's like 80 pages. I just
agree,
think it's that.
But I still feel like each thought was more intentional. And I feel like in this movie, and I felt this way in Lawrence of Arabia, where it's like, dang, you just really had a lot of space and you didn't want to cut anything, and so it feels kind of wasteful.
I don't think it's, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to debate you on it.
Well,
but I think
it
that
is a
it's
different
it's still doing something different. It's trying to evoke a certain feeling or sense that takes very specific dedication on the part of the viewer, rather than it trying to communicate to you something in a very specific manner. I don't really know how to describe it. It's part of the epic format, and reading epic poetry, I feel like, has helped in kind of grasping that, like
Maybe I just
reading
doesn't-
Beowulf or something.
Maybe
I
I
don't
just doesn't vibe with it, was my sentence.
That's fair.
But maybe that's just not the way that like, if art is a conversation, maybe I just haven't learned to speak that language, or it's not my favorite way to have a conversation. I'd
And that's
rather
totally
be
yeah,
fair.
that is totally valid. But I think, especially, it's a difference in the philosophy that is really peaking here in film in the 1960s. And I think it's kind of coming back around again as movie runtimes are just getting longer, and we're getting a bit more of that. But we've seen this in the last few episodes that we've done. Why is The Sound of Music as long as it is? Why, like, what's up with the way that Fellini uses space in 8.5? What is up with this sort of energy that's going through here in the 1960s? And Andrei Tarkovsky is largely lumped in with this unofficial grouping of people called like slow cinema. Another like major figure in it is like Bela Tarr. And so
he's very much a part of it with his
Yeah.
7-hour movie.
Yeah. So Satan Tango, I have seen it. I'll get into that. But the philosophy going into these very long movies is that there is it's not that there is more like plot or character or even like text necessarily within the film, but the space allowed within it creates a different sort of meaning. There is a meaning in this increasing of space, and that's why I view movies like this and like the most recent movie I've seen that has had this sort of vibe, most recently released that is of course A Hidden Life.
Yeah, which oh man, that movie works so well.
Yeah.
But it maybe it's like I think there's some poetry aspects to it, right? And it's comparable to those sorts of longer form things. But maybe in a sense, it's more comparing a novel to a poem. You know what I mean? Like the way that you read.
Yeah.
I mean, again, something I would compare it to is Middlemarch. I compared Middlemarch and Hidden Life constantly when I was reading it. But yeah, when you get that sense when you get to the end of a book or when you're going through it, like, yes, it has, parts where it's talking about very specific parts of like medical science in the Victorian era that this guy, because he's making a medical practice and there's so many different characters in there's this huge web, but there's so much that can be talked about by doing that than by saying, here's the thing that I want you to know. And I'm going to do that through tight, vivid imagery real quick.
Has anyone else read Moby Dick?
I have listened. Audible has told me I've listened to the entire thing twice. I definitely have not listened to the entire thing twice, or even once, or even probably a quarter of the way through. But I've had it playing into my ears for several hours.
Yes.
I think what you're describing is kind of what Moby Dick is. There are 3 chapters describing how to draw a whale, and like using specific examples of people who drew whales wrong, and what color a whale should be, and several chapters on how to like skin a whale. Which
Middlemarch is not that even intense. It's almost entirely spending its runtime in characters' heads and talking about characters' emotions.
And I would like that. So maybe that's what my difference is, because I've also read novels like Far from the Madding Crowd. It's a slow-moving novel. There's just like. And there are, like, hey, we're going to talk about how to clean a sheep in this cool bath that we invented.
Right.
But it's not, I don't feel as wasted at the end. And I'm not trying to say that all art needs to speak to me, because that's selfish and that's, like, not what art is for. But I felt like my time had been wasted at the end of Moby Dick. And I didn't feel that as much at the end of Far from the Madding Crowd. And I didn't feel like my time was wasted at the end of Cleo from 5 to 7, which is a movie with space. Yeah. But I do feel, and I don't feel like my time was entirely wasted watching this movie. I enjoyed much of it, very much. But I almost feel like it's unkind. Like, I was thinking about this as I was, like, rushing to the bathroom before we started this podcast, but just that I only have one life, and I only have 1 year to be 19, and I just spent 3 hours of it watching this movie, and I spent 4 hours watching Lawrence of Arabia, like... For my sake, can you communicate your idea more concisely and be more intentional about the things that you want to tell me?
Well, and maybe
the things
this
that
is
you
like
think are important?
A cultural divide, though, too, because a lot of those very long novels that take their time, and a lot of these longer films, they were made at periods in history where human life had more space in it, where people needed more time to fill. That classic John Mulaney bit. What was it like in the old times? We had to come up with slow activities to do all day because we had
Like
nothing to
waving
entertain
to
ourselves.
ships.
Do we know anyone on the ship? No. Why are you waving? Because we have nothing better to do. And
Yes.
our modern life moves a lot faster, and thus the media that we tend to consume has gotten like
Quibi.
it's gotten faster, and there are
Not that
definitely
fast.
people who criticize that, but I think that in the speed you don't necessarily have to sacrifice substance.
But it's telling that people will watch and binge through a show. And
Right.
then we'll complain about a movie being 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
Well, and here's another thing.
It's yeah.
Like Star Wars being 3 hours, or like the Justice League movie being 3+ hours. That's like action the whole time. There's no space. I never watched the Justice
Not in
but
Justice League.
Well,
There's no space. But I don't know.
Yeah. No, but
Hunter,
yeah,
say
sorry.
your thing.
I just was going to say, when I think of it with a show, that's something that's meant to be short form. So it's like a half-hour show. That's like 25-ish minutes of
Right.
dense, fun, hooky entertainment
that
and then
people
you can
do
just
for like
string
7
that.
hours straight.
Yeah, you can just be like, oh, I just get a little hit and a little hit and a little hit.
I feel
Yeah.
like we're trained to just need
Yeah.
the immediate serotonin hit.
Right.
And
And if
and,
you-
and again, it's
Not that you have to watch a show that way too, because
Right.
it also works if you spread it out.
yeah.
But then as opposed to like a movie being like, you're going to spend 2-ish hours
yeah.
and it's not all going to be super dense. Maybe it will. I don't know.
And I think
And then
maybe some
maybe
of
there's
that comes
payoff.
down to plot structure as well. Because
Yeah.
if you're saying, well, Star Wars movie 3 hours, whatever.
No,
it's-
I want to say that I feel just as wasted by it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Because my thought was like, well, I wonder if the desire in some ways is to have a very specific arc, like coming for an arc to be met, a character arc, a story arc, and when you want that and you want that hit where it makes sense in the end, it clicks, whatever, then you want that to be done more efficiently. But if you're coming to a piece of art with like what's the exploration, maybe it's difference between exploration versus like structure, if that makes sense. Maybe
there
I don't know.
is some difference in the media there, essentially, because like there are a lot of shows, and I this Christmas I watched Satan Tango, Bellatar's like long movie, and I did it after watching The Queen's Gambit, which is of comparable length, but is an episodic series, and I got some flack that I wasn't expecting when I said, hey, so I watched like Satan Tango, 7-hour movie, but I watched it as if it were 7 1-hour episodes of like a show, because that consuming media like this and taking your time, I think, is valuable, and you're still getting value from it. But there is this sense in which it is felt that it is necessary to be overwhelmed with media, with this specific type of media, that I don't know if it's like cultural or personal philosophy, but I do get, because I don't always watch, I try and give each piece of media that I watch its best platform to actually allow me to experience it. Like,
Right.
I love these Neo Giallo movies by Helene Cotet and Bruno Forzani, but I can only watch them in about 15-minute increments. They aren't incredibly long, but they are so visually dense with visual information that if I watch it for too long, I become numb to everything that's happening. It's just always moving. It is just visually experimenting through an entire runtime. And so with movies like this, there is that sort of pride in having conquered something for a lot of people, and this sense where a lot of people see the fact that you're being overcome by the movie and that it is pushing through your limits and making it so that you're unable to really engage with the movie,
Right.
because of how dense and vast and lengthy it is, because it overcomes our ability to like engage with it. there is some more value there that I don't
like a
necessarily agree with.
consumerist perspective of give me the thing
Yeah.
that I'm here for. Maybe is that what you're saying?
I openly advocated to all of you that you try and watch this movie in whatever way made it like the most comfortable viewing experience for you.
And I tried to do that, but Criterion Collection was broken.
Yeah, so you didn't really have the time to be able to do that because of the constraints of this podcast. But this movie is a series of fairly unconnected vignettes that, like, each individually have meaning, and when put together have meaning, but I don't think have to be experienced sequentially without any time elapsing between them to be able to gain that meaning. Like, if you watched one segment every month for a year, you might lose something, but, like, watching it over a couple of days, you're still getting that there, but you aren't being just completely overwhelmed by the denseness of the movie. I think even something like
Or the
Christopher
lack
Nolan's
thereof.
Tenet, yeah, because like there are a lot of movies that have so much visual information or thematic information in terms of Andrei Rublev that people just give up partway through the movie.
Yeah.
Like they're like, I can't, I don't know what's going on, and I've given up trying to. Whereas if you just take more time with it, maybe you do.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that's interesting because what I was thinking while watching this movie was I was actually feeling like I'm not giving these movies enough of a chance because I'm watching them on my laptop trying to get ready for a podcast when I could be sitting in the basement with the TV with the sound on, doing nothing else, not texting, not checking, scores, not doing anything, just kind of seeing what it has and trying to experience it, ironically, kind of in the way that I would a poem, which is where I can listen to an audiobook and get it done, or like a Star Wars book came out and I stick it on Audible and I get through it, or for a class and you just kind of skim through it, you get the basic information, you pass the test, you write the essay on it. But with a poem, you're like, I have to sit down, I have to fully invest myself in it, and I have to see it for its form as well as its content in its entirety, not always in its entirety, meaning right all at the same time, but giving it all that I have in that way of really trying to see everything that's there.
It does change
and
things, yeah.
That's the only reason why I feel like something like Redbeard, which is a straight 3-hour long movie that, like, I don't know, a lot of people are like, I don't know about it, is the kind of thing that I, would want to write a thesis on, because you give it that amount of space. And I do feel like that does come down to ultimately personal preference. But I do like viewing media of specifically this kind, or that has this kind of, discussion around it as something that, like, I'm trying to understand more than I'm trying to get it, like get the thing from it, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've noticed that too for myself. Like, sometimes it's hard with the podcast movies to not see it as just something to kind of get done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. That's something I've struggled with since starting this, and I want to get better. But yeah, it does change the experience. Like, I've noticed when I watch movies, even just like for fun movies, if I like am watching it like downstairs at night, lights off, turn my phone off, just like watching the movie, and that's all I'm doing, that's a very different experience than if I'm like checking my phone during it and getting distracted during it. Like, it's completely
Just
different.
drastically changing.
Yeah. So I don't know that I gave this movie kind of a low score because I was a little bit bored with it sometimes. And I don't know that I would rate it super highly if I had had different watching experience with it, but it probably would be different.
I feel that way about Tokyo Story a little bit, maybe. Because that's a movie that I did do that experience for, and I didn't specifically plan it. I just felt like doing that, and it became like incredibly special and meaningful to me. Whereas if most people who have watched it in general vicinity is very boring and it's too long.
Right. And I didn't really give it the attention that it probably deserves. So.
But it I don't know. I think it's I don't know. I think it's fascinating. Don't read my most recent Letterboxd review.
What? Okay, this might be a controversial take, but I don't think we owe art anything. You don't owe it to Tokyo Story. You don't owe it to Andrei Rublev to get it. You don't. In a sense, every time we go into like a movie that is intended to mean something beyond entertainment, because entertainment is a valid reason for something to exist. Sometimes there is something that you just need to let something off of yourself to be able to function. And I think that's a valid thing. But there are movies where you're going into it for something more. There's a reason why you're going into this art.
Yeah.
And because the reason why you're doing that is not for the art. I mean, sometimes I go into a movie and I'm like, well, I need to see this because this is like famous movie and stuff. I owe it to this movie to engage with it, I guess. But essentially what we're doing is we're doing this somewhat selfishly for ourselves in hopes of building something out of us. And every time we're taking a gamble, we're taking a risk. Is this amount of time that I'm going to be spending in a sense, like 3 hours, is this time that I'm willing to gamble? What do I have to possibly gain out of it? And honestly, it sounds like, Anna, for you, that this amount of time that's spent on these sort of movies, there isn't really necessarily something that for you is going to be worth that gamble.
Yeah.
Like if you roll Snake Eyes, and I don't know how craps works, but if you like win the game, your highest level is not going to like beat out the opportunity cost for these long
I think
movies.
that's a good way to express it, and it did help me feel better about kind of saying like, well, what am I going to get out of it? Because that feels like a selfish way to approach art. But you are right that I am kind of saying I'm going to join this podcast because I want to watch good movies or movies that society thinks is good or that have something to say to me, and I'm going to gamble on one of them and it might not speak to me, which has happened to all of us. There's some movies that have spoken to us more than others, and that's fine. I do like what you're saying about giving a movie the space that it's asking of you, and I definitely didn't do that for this one, and some of it wasn't my own fault. Like, I saw that it was 3 hours, I was gonna watch it in 2 sittings, and last night everything was broken, and so I watched it in 5-minute increments where it would like buffer, and then I'd get like a chunk that was super laggy, and then it would buffer again. It was terrible. And then today it was kind of doing that same thing, so I was already kind of not grumpy about it, but I was kind of like, I wanted to experience this differently.
That's not great.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's interesting. And about like reading, I don't know if I have more to say right now, but I guess I'm thinking what my mindset is as I approach art, but also as I approach time, because it's kind of something that's come up for me a lot this year, is the way that I approach time. And I'm a very timely person, and time is something that I'm always aware of and is really important to me. So in some ways, I really like it when a movie asks time of me. Like Patterson, I love the time that it asks of me to just sit and be there and look at the waterfall. There's other movies that do that too, but I guess maybe I want to spend my time looking at beautiful things. And if it was a beautiful, like, I mean, it is a beautiful movie. The cinematography, it's amazing. And like the colors and the light and dark, the whole time I was like, wow, that's really cool. Or like, wow, that probably symbolizes something. But I guess maybe part of it is that it's not beautiful to look at as much. I'm just like, wow, another hour of Russia being muddy. Cool.
I wonder how you would feel about A Hidden Life then, because that movie is gorgeous.
I think I would love it. I think that would like kill me.
And a reason why I am a bit sad that we didn't wind up doing Stalker is because Stalker is essentially, there are a number of readings of it, but the biggest consensus of readings I've seen is a dialogue about a scientific, naturalistic view of the world and a mystical, religious one, and a dialogue between them. It is shot in color and sepia. It is an absolutely gorgeous movie, in a way that this movie it is too. There are water rushing through the reeds moments
Yeah.
in this, which
Or like when the paint was going into the water and it was really pretty.
that was actually, I think that was milk.
Yeah.
Oh.
Although it might have been paint.
Because the kid
now that
was
you say it.
like going whoosh with milk on his
Yeah.
face, and he was just like taking it.
Yeah,
Why did you say-
that specific moment. There are a lot more moments like that in Tarkovsky's future movies. I really love The Sacrifice because it has a lot of those. Stalker has more. Solaris, where I'm taking like the water through the reeds thing, there is a solid like 1 or 2 minute shot of just like these underwater reeds being blown along by a river and just like twisting in the river in that movie. And it just sticks in my head. But
Maybe we could do a bonus episode or something.
I was literally about to say we should do a bonus episode, Baraka by Ron Frick.
oh yeah, I've heard you speak about that. That has been on my Letterboxd watch
It's
list
very
forever.
good.
And I go purely on instinct when I'm not doing this podcast, so I will watch anything when I suddenly get the hankering for it, and I honestly have no idea when I'll ever be in the mood for that movie, but it'll happen at some point.
We will have
It kind
two
of-
bonus episodes. We'll do Baraka, and then we'll do But I'm a Cheerleader. So that way there's one thing that fits the mood.
There you go.
You know?
You haven't seen that movie, have you, Anna?
Sorry, I accidentally ripped out
Yeah.
the cord of my headphones, so I didn't hear any of that.
Yeah. So we're at some point just all going to watch But I'm a Cheerleader and talk about it and post it on our Patreon because that is one of my favorite movies that I have shoved upon everyone
One
I
of
know.
my favorite movies.
And most of them have reacted positively because we run in those spaces
It's
that might enjoy
excellent.
those movies.
I did have somebody who watched the film and was like, I don't know, there's like a lot of agenda here.
Would I like
So, you know, not naming names, but if you're listening, you know who you are.
it? Oof.
Yeah, so
You should just do like Patreon episodes where we all watch our top favorite movies, which is like hard to identify, but mine is like always Lars and the Real Girl, like forever.
I've been curious about that because
need to
it
see
looks
So good.
it looks like the type of
quite
movie.
fun.
I was experiencing this recently. I watch extreme horror movies for fun because I find it cathartic and legitimately releasing. It doesn't push triggers for me the way that like violence does for some people and like
Yeah.
blood and stuff.
Speaking of violence, I might have to dip out for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one.
There isn't actually much of any violence in that, just so you know.
I said it was
it's
implied.
mostly implied.
Yeah.
But there is a great deal of terror. You can see. Make an informed incision. You do not have to. I would also just thoroughly enjoy you going into the thing without seeing the movie, and I just explain what happens to you. And
I also
watch your
just
face.
don't want to watch it alone,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and no one in my
wonder-
family would watch it with me.
But
I wonder when you end up being out here or when we might be able to do it together because I will probably
yeah,
react
maybe.
the same way that you will.
yeah,
Or
that would be fun.
If my reaction to the trial of the Chicago 7 is any indication, I can break down at any time. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, I watch extreme horror movies for fun. The movie Elf has caused me to almost vomit. Pure anxiety.
Has this
Awkward
not been brought
social
up on the podcast
social
anymore?
situations like that. Movies that rely upon people just deciding to do stupid things or like. I can't watch most mainstream comedies for that sort of reason. I find
Because they're
them
so awkward.
Yeah.
just
I feel that.
I can't watch Judd Apatow movies.
I can barely watch The Office, even
Oh,
the
yeah,
later
that was
seasons.
hard.
Office really does
I
hurt.
don't.
Early,
Like it.
I tried to watch the British one, which is so much worse for that factor.
Oh, interesting.
You get 30 seconds into that thing and you have to turn it off because it's like
Oh, yeah.
what you
Oh,
think
my
the
goodness.
American Office is, but it's like times 11. It's just
Dang.
Oh, my
insane.
goodness.
It's so bad. It hurts so
But-
bad.
Like everybody loves the Safdie brothers movies now. They look pretty. I've seen both of them.
It's a good time still.
Oh my goodness.
That just destroys you. You
I-
can't leave that
I-
movie without just
I
being
did not have
shaken.
fingernails
wait,
after.
Wait. Sorry, I don't
Yeah.
want to.
No.
That. I'm really curious, like what specifically about Elf though, like makes you like on edge.
What specifically about Elf?
If there's a specific thing you can point
Will
to.
Ferrell's entire persona
Okay.
and every action and word he says in that movie.
What about the bit where he eats the
Okay.
gum?
that's probably
I
the
don't
worst
even
part.
remember that. I've seen the movie.
No, the worst part
I've
is
been-
when he goes into the coffee shop and says, "Congratulations!"
I have had
The world's
3
best
people
cup of coffee.
force me to watch that movie because they are like, "No, you're gonna love it. You just weren't in the place for it before."
What
And
about
every single
Napoleon
time.
Dynamite?
True.
Napoleon Dynamite is fine. That's the thing.
It has
It's
more
like
heart.
it's
Yeah.
It's more
specific,
soft.
and I can't pin it down. I just know it when I feel it.
Okay.
Like what ruined me
more
last night
honest.
about Stations of the Cross was that whole thing. There, it really hits me when there's an aspect in which someone is like living in bad faith in the Sardian sense. I believe Jean-Paul Sartre is the one who came up with the term living in bad faith, but it's where you are not experiencing reality in. I don't have
Like,
I
not
just drank 6
experiencing
shots
reality
of espresso.
honestly,
For some
but it-
reason, talking about existentialism right now, just my brain is like
Let's talk about the Seventh
No.
Seal again.
yeah.
Oh, man.
I do feel like there were parallels with that movie, but I felt like in a weird way, I said in the group chat, I was like, this is like what I thought that would be. And I would say that the Seventh Seal is more concise, but I felt like I maybe had more opportunity to like bask in ideas in this movie. And I think that like served my experience positively. There were other things about my experience of watching the Seventh Seal that need work, but
it's
Needs work.
there are
Indeed.
things. If I remember correctly, you watched that on an iPad on your knees in my car
True.
on the way to the recording
that was
studio.
just the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's gonna hit
I would
everyone
recommend that you
differently.
watch it again and give it the space because I have the
I
opposite
do.
opinion of these two films. So.
My plan because last summer what I did was I went through a Kurosawa movie every day without fail until I'd gotten through it all, writing up my thoughts, and that turned into good things for me in my brain and serotonin and love. And I also kind of did that for Chaplin. I didn't get all the way through everything Chaplin did, but anyway, there are 3 directors that I like really want to do that with, and it's totally going to destroy me if I do them all in a row. If I do Ozu, Bergman, and Tarkovsky, I
grief.
will die. Like,
Yeah,
there's
you
no
will.
way I could survive, and I will.
Well,
do
so
it.
Tarkovsky is kind of mercifully short. He doesn't have that extensive of a filmography.
Right, but Bergman has like 44, and Ozu has like 30 something because like 8 of his movies are lost.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was directing in like the silent era, and then some things kind of happened in Japan. I don't know if you guys are aware
What?
of this.
I only know one thing that happened in Japan.
What happened? Oh God, what happened? Anna, you need to tell me what happened.
My brain shut off. I was like, haha.
Are you thinking about
Nothing.
that time that America did a
Did a oopsie?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
there was
mass-
in World War II.
Murder.
I think it was I can't remember if it was a specific warehouse of like Toho's that got just like burnt, just burnt to the
Oops.
ground. They lost so many classic Japanese films, and that is a result of probably America, because we're so nice to the Japanese people, aren't we? We did only good things.
Well, there is a lot of lost cinema that is just tragic in its lostness and pieces. I'm remembering back to our housemaid episode
Oh yeah,
with the hats.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
cutting
and the
up
thing
old
with the
films
stairs.
to
Oh yeah,
reinforce hats.
because
Yeah.
that was an interesting note. And also,
You were
I
gone that week.
just thinking
but
about how many times people fall off stairs, and I don't know. That's what I
the
thought.
horse fell off the stairs in this
Yep.
movie.
There's so many. Maybe we should make a whole list of the falling off of stairs. That
That's my new letterboxed list.
speaking of which,
This
the
whole
letterbox
conversation
is
started
popping.
because you were asking if Elf or Lars and the Real Girl was as awkward as Elf, and the answer is no, it's not.
Okay.
It's as
Totally not.
heartwarming Well, it's like the same way that Napoleon Dynamite is heartwarming, so is Lars and the Real Girl, but times a bajillion.
And it doesn't have as much awkward.
It's not as awkward.
It doesn't feel
Okay.
like a very awkward movie to me.
No.
It might be chill. I don't know. I do avoid those sort of the movies that look like that for that reason though.
Yeah.
Until I just decide to watch them and hate myself.
Yeah, I think it's a nice movie. I can't remember the order. I think you showed me that movie and I responded with 20th Century Women.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So if we all went and did our like pet picks, I'm just curious like what. So Anna's would be Lars and the Real Girl, right?
Yeah.
Probably. What would yours be?
Come back to me.
Chicken Barrette.
because
what is your name?
because Frances Ha is on the list because
Right.
I made this list, so I
Okay,
got to fit
yeah.
a lot of my movies in there. I did not stick in there. Patterson, The Last Unicorn, Columbus, 20th Century Women, A Hidden Life. Just off the top of my head, though, a lot of those directors do feature in the list. I would probably go with Columbus right now.
I mean, you've already gotten me to watch most of those movies, so
because they're good.
yeah, no, I've enjoyed them.
They're so good. I want
Columbus
everybody
is
to
a good
watch The
pick.
Last Unicorn, but that movie is like so something to me that I don't think I could take it if
Okay.
you guys didn't like it. Like I think I would like my brain would just melt in my
I
head
made
and pour out my ears.
I watched it when I was younger, and I made an attempt one night, but the synthesizers were aggravating a headache I already had. So.
That's what it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something about that movie that like really got under my skin both times I watched it. Like just like legitimately under my
eerie.
skin. And anyway, but yeah, Columbus.
Hunter, what would your pick be?
I was looking at my 5-star movies to try and get an idea, and I don't.
Interstellar.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's a good choice, actually.
It's a pretty okay movie.
It's really good.
Not
I
one
was
of my
always making
favorites. I don't know. I'm almost wondering about like if I was gonna like. I see. I don't know who's seen. Actually, I guess I can look. Can't I?
What? You can.
I don't know because should it be something that like you guys haven't seen though? Most likely, like,
Just wasn't
Doesn't
your pet
matter.
pick.
Well,
'Cause
yeah,
if I,
it's-
I've
it's
seen
a
Lars and the
movie
Real
that-
Girl.
Right.
and I
That
haven't
you
seen
If
Columbus.
I'm
want
not-
us to watch.
if I'm not thinking in terms of like you've already seen it, I would maybe go to something like 10 Cloverfield Lane
Okay.
or like
Yeah.
That movie
fucking-
works until it doesn't.
It works the whole way, and you're wrong.
I
I think
have.
Pretty
I
decent
am.
the whole way.
I
Yeah.
will. Okay, for once in my life, I will accept that I'm wrong about
No.
something. I am wrong in the fact
No.
that I think that the last 10 minutes of that
I-
movie ruins the rest
no.
of the movie.
It does not ruin
I mean,
the
it's-
rest of the movie.
It's not an uncommon opinion.
It's not.
It isn't.
I think it's fine.
Oh,
I think you. No, I
See,
think that's
in my
actually
mind,
extremely,
the last
like,
10
totally
minutes
good.
of that movie still has Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it.
Oh, that's a good
Exactly.
point.
And
yeah.
so it cannot be ruined for me on that basis alone.
Yeah, that's fair.
or maybe something like Edge of Tomorrow or something, just because I think it's a really clever and fun like sci-fi action movie,
Yeah.
and it's a sci-fi action movie for the whole time.
That's true. I do like that
Yeah.
movie. What about yours? What was
Well,
your-
so
El Sur?
my pick actually would be El Sur. Believe
Oh,
it or
man.
not, because I don't want to cause you all pain. I don't want to push you out of
you.
your comfort zone if you don't want to.
Thank
and El Sur
you.
is a beautiful, sweet movie. Fairly. I don't even know how to describe how that movie works for me. There is a scene in which someone sits at a table, and I think she's reading a letter she found that her father wrote to like a past lover. And she's just sitting there, and she's just reading the letter, and it did something to me. I'm not entirely sure like what it was or how to describe it. That entire it. I'm really obsessed with just like the feeling that a movie gives you, and I'm not entirely. I sometimes describe it as like atmosphere, or like when I'm being really zoomer,
Je ne sais
the
quoi.
vibe.
Mise en scène. I don't know what that actually means. Mise en shrubbery.
It's something. It's something where you're just all of the elements combine, and it gives this feeling to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I love that movie. I think more people should watch it. I really want to find Victor Uris's. He directed 3 films. One of them's a documentary, and that's the one I haven't seen yet.
Gotcha.
He also directed The Spirit of the Beehive, which is also great, but I don't think it hits for me the same way. There is a beautiful scene in which he brought a projector to a small village, and he showed a girl the film Frankenstein for the first time, and just this small little girl the old Frankenstein movie. And it was the scene where the little girl gave Frankenstein a flower, and he just shot her face, and it was like the first film she had ever seen in her entire life. And there was a face of just pure joy. And that moment has really stuck with me from that movie.
I think we should do that. I think we should probably do a series of bonus episodes or a Patreon thing.
Where we each get to talk about our favorite movie. Because, I didn't tell you anything about Lars and the Regal. You just had to watch it.
It's true.
Yeah.
And I'm not
I
saying
know the
anything
plot
about
because
Columbus because I probably have already
read
said it all before.
synopses. But
Yeah. That sounds
Anyway.
good. We'll do that. But in the meantime, we should probably wrap up.
Yeah.
Because it's that
Yes,
time.
please.
Thank you for the things that you did, person listening to the podcast. You did things. And
you're doing
hopefully
a good job.
You really are. We're proud of you.
Yeah.
There's a few things that you might want to improve on.
No. You're
and
doing great right where you are.
No, I think they know who I'm talking to. I think they know exactly who they are, and there are things that they can improve upon, and they can do that by going to movieoverloadpod.com.
Oh, yeah.
Finding us on all of the social medias and either giving us some follows or just some encouragement. We used to say send us hate tweets, and we stopped saying that because we never got any, and you could really be that person to send us some hate tweets.
Send us a hate tweet about my comment about 3-hour epics.
Oh God, don't read my letterbox review.
Too late, I already did.
Yeah,
I felt when I put that out, I was like, oh no, there's gonna be some instance in which this comes up somehow, someday.
And you offended me of all people.
And I will, and that's probably my most aggressive rant that I've put on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Just kidding,
Anyway,
I'm not
you can
offended.
find our Letterboxd as well on the web. Well, you should be able to find it on the website.
So
It'll be
at
there.
least the list.
Yeah, the list on
I should
my
link
account.
it. Yeah, I should.
We
Link
have
it to
our
the one
own
that's on
Movie
the
Overload Letterboxd account.
Yes.
which is so
yeah. I
cool.
mean,
Yeah.
I would while we're talking about it, I would say that we need to update the website a bit, just because it still says there's 3 of us, 3 friends who are doing this, which hasn't been true. in a
Sorry,
few
we're not trying
episodes.
to disclude you.
I mean,
No,
it's me.
I don't
I'm
think
not friends.
No.
I don't think I
that's fine.
I'll update
remember the 3rd episode I did here at all. It's
Why?
Why
Why
it
do
was
you
probably
care
just
about
3
the
friends
3rd
there.
episode that you did?
What?
What would that have been?
Why is that relevant?
No, so there were only 3 friends in that episode because I wasn't present mentally.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
it
that's the
was
only time it's been true.
Cleo from 5 to 7.
Yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't. No, the 3rd
That
episode.
was when it was these
it was
3
is the
friends.
first time. It was only 2 friends because you were gone. You were on break for your theater thing, and it was
Was that the 400 blows?
400 blows.
Yeah.
I don't remember that episode at all. I don't know what I did.
don't remember anything
I don't know what I
about
said. I probably gave some bad takes that I'm going to be crucified for at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Hunter, do you
Bring
have
it
a
back
quote
to
for
you.
us?
You really must have
Oh,
a.
man, I forgot.
Yeah.
Thanks for
I kinda-
listening.
You should quote it in
Whoa,
Russian.
You guys are so cool. I
don't
can't
know how
believe
to
you
do
listen.
Russian.
And when we close out the episode, we say things at the end of the
Maybe I'll
podcast.
find
Hunter
the one I
always
wanna do.
says,
I thought it would be
thing.
really funny after you guys reminded me of the scene where she's throwing milk at him to be able to have the direct quote where he's like, "You shouldn't toss milk at people. It is a sin,
sin."
or
And
something."
and she's like, "Why is it a sin?" And he's like, "Because."
Because.
it is.
Yeah, well, the IMDb quotes page is very, very sparse for this
Yeah,
movie.
I
have
tried
the
to
big
cheat
things.
with that.
What's
it didn't
the,
work.
Did you find any quote?
There are
Well,
4 quotes on there.
Yeah, I looked at
And
the
they are
IMDb
good
page.
quotes,
I want
but-
a quote.
Like,
They're really long. There's one really long one. Okay, if I must pull one.
no, you can
from
do the one about
Darn.
knowledge bringing suffering. I think that's good enough.
Thanks for
Um,
listening.
yeah.
That's what we say at the end.
Where is that?
Episode of the podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Oh, yes,
and
the
sticking
classic.
through with us through this long, epic podcast. If you like short form podcasts, don't listen to this one.
Yeah, this one's probably the
Thank
longer
you for our editor Hunter, who is also our co-host Hunter.
Oh my god,
note
I love that guy.
to editing Hunter, you can remove the time that we're padding while you're trying to find the quote. It's fine.
No, I love
Our-
that every week. As we say here when I pad to give Hunter the chance to find a quote.
Well, first of all, our editor is Fred.
Yeah.
Which you would know if you
Fredditor.
had looked at our Instagram page.
Yeah, I knew
Aw.
that.
Yeah,
Come on.
I totally have
yes.
Instagram.
And the quote is the classic, "In much wisdom there is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow."
Oh, I was talking about that
Is
quote
that
on the way
Yoda?
over.
In that voice, it does sound like a quote from Yoda. I am. Are we finding
Just
even
all
more
do that
inspirations
stealthing.
for your precious Star Wars?
Just going into Jim Henson, I guess.
Chicken
total.
beaks?
Yep.
Well, wait, the Dark Crystal is on this list.
Yeah!
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope it still is. I hope I didn't take it off for some reason.
Oh, you definitely did in a fit of some
Did I?
unknown insanity.
Did I really?
I don't know, but I
Okay, we're fixing it. It's going back on.
Also, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks for listening.
cool.
Thanks
Bye.
for listening.
Get
Bye,
outta here.
everyone.
Bye.
Break. End
Okay.
scene.
It is over
Bada bing, bada bang. I'm so hungry.
Camel! We got the camel.
Yes!
I
Hunter,
forgot-
thank you!
I forgot to use it. That's true. Yeah.
We also verbally quoted the French quote, but never actually played it. Which
True. I think it's the.
Nope.
Yeah, that one. Oh.
Ah, the French.
Nice. French. We got 4 buttons and we're gonna use it. Dang it.
That's the bonus bit for you, Hunter. Because you can replace their parts, but they're still them. But at what point, what is it that you replace? Or is the car no longer the car anymore? You know,
Well, I think
because you'll be able to tell. Like it'll be kind of obvious, right?
that
where is the car's soul hid?
Yeah.
maybe the answer is well, in the ship of Theseus, it's still the ship of Theseus because it's the ship of Theseus because Theseus owns the ship.
Well, yeah.
And in another institution, like if you had every single part of your body removed, like you wouldn't, like, in a sense, every time a part of your body was removed, you'd become a different version of you. Just you, like, you know, because it's a version of you now that is missing such and such a piece. So it isn't necessarily full transformation, but just a series of permutations that can completely transform someone
Yeah,
over time.
but
the
when does
transformation
the
is so-
car stop knowing how to talk? Or
I think well, so
something.
all vehicles in the Cars universe know how to talk. So if
Except for like the bugs, because there are cars
Yeah.
that are bugs,
That's a
and
good
they're
point.
just bugs.
yeah,
And actually, there are dead cars. Cars die.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
But do they still drive? Can they still drive? They need gas. So
Well, I don't think they
maybe
have
they
any
function-
Follow-up question. If there's a car Pope, then there was a car Jesus. How does one crucify a car?
You know how you can grab? You know how they have the cops have those things that they like throw out and they like latch around
Yeah.
your tires and stop you from
Yeah.
moving. You use those, and then you lift him up.
I think you just take the bolts out and you like extend out the axles.
Oh,
Like, I don't know. I followed that
There's a decent amount
depressing
of car
Jesus movie
torture
by
in Cars too.
a French New Extremity film in which people are just skinned alive. So that's just where my brain is
yikes.
right now.
Okay.
It was it
What
was
if
very
You
cathartic actually.
replace the windshield.
Like I was really depressed.
What
and I was in a
happens
really
when you
good mood
replace
after.
the windshield?
do they have different
Because
eye
that's his
colors?
eyes.
Yeah. So like it's like eye surgery, right?
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
it's not clean
But they have
because they're
but
like
they have parts of their bodies that cars don't normally have, like eyelids. Like what's going on?
And
they're
eyelashes.
biomechanical creatures as opposed to purely
Are you sure?
biological creatures.
Well, they don't have like normal windshields.
Well, and tires seem
That-
to be a
that's-
bit like
but
shoes.
They
for
can
them.
manipulate
But they
their
don't
tires
eat.
and
They just
wheels.
have gas. They just use
Yeah,
gas.
That's
still.
true. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
They,
Sure. Yeah.
like they don't have anything that would that we
Hence-
would know would be biologically sustaining them,
Yeah.
like a carbon-based life form.
Well,
but
they
at the same
might
time,
not.
they
Which
just
is a
function
question, like,
cars.
why do they have mouths?
right. They have tongues.
to talk?
They have tongues,
Yeah, I know.
which is a
But
muscle.
why wouldn't
they,
which is,
like,
which is
communicate through, like,
biological.
But my point is that
That's
there's
okay.
nothing sustaining that.
Right, and maybe
that
they
we
don't.
see.
But maybe they don't need that. Maybe they have some weird process by which they convert gasoline.
Yeah.
Then why do they
No,
have
it's just
mouths
energy.
Metabolize
for
it.
any
Yeah.
other reason?
And
other-
it works their muscles, which they have
Well,
at
that's the
least
thing.
one of.
I think that Pixar just chickened out because cars already have mechanisms by which to produce noise,
Do
namely
cars
the horn.
have babies?
Oh yeah, they have babies in there. I don't know exactly. Is it a robot situation? Does anyone else
I
remember
was gonna
that?
say, is it
robots,
like robots where you get like hand me down?
You get
Like
you get a
Yeah.
kid, and then you
Cars?
and you build it up like that. That seems to sort of make sense within that universe.
I think that makes a lot of sense. It's better than imagining cars being pregnant.
Yeah, I don't. I'm assuming that somewhere on the internet there's like a Rule 34, like Pixar's cars, Disney Pixar's cars, like attempting to make them sexual and
Hunter,
I hate-
sex in
stop.
some way.
You
Stop.
always have to add
But-
licks to everything we
I
talk
don't
about.
think-
So
You're
unfortunately,
right.
you have to find that now.
No,
You-
please.
Oh no.
But okay,
Okay, you have to show.
that is
You
ridiculous.
have to show the whole class.
It's,
Do you have enough to share?
that the head. It's just the car.
It's really not pleasant.
It's just
Oh, well, I think that was like from a Lil Nas X tweet or something. He like shared
Yeah,
that, being like,
that
"Oh
was what it was.
yeah," and I was like, "Oh my god!"
Should we talk about the male gaze in the Pixar universe?
And then that's like a male character too. Like that's Lightning McQueen, but just with a
Lightning
I thought that
McQueen's a
was a
femboy.
humanoid woman body. He's got boobies.
yeah.
So anyway, should we
This is
start
bizarre.
the show?
Anyway,
No, we never start the show.
I'm always just about this close to just literally eating my mic, like Mike Wazowski does, and just
Can't relate.
Yum.
getting the laugh.
and then you
'cause
got
I
to
burp it,
can you spit it back out again?
Try
and he
it.
like catches it.
Yeah,
like
You
that.
that's
will.
awesome.
You're right. No, that was cool.
And it comes flying
In my
out.
mind, it was like I'm done with this podcast. I'm eating my microphone. But I guess if I did that, then that would be kind of cool.
That's what we should do at the end of Parasite. We should all eat our mics.
So Anna,